Oh, man. Right. I am running entirely on pure, unadulterated, and frankly, wildly unlikely euphoria right now. I just spent the entire weekend basically recovering from watching the Chelsea versus Sunderland game.
Oh, really? How'd that go?
You kidding? If you're a lifelong supporter of the Black Cats, like me, you witnessed maybe the most utterly cathartic moment of the last decade. Sunderland won
Yeah.
against Chelsea. It was bloody amazing.
Wow. Okay. That is an upset. Congrats.
Thanks. I know we're pivoting sharply here from like a massive sporting miracle to a nuclear apocalypse, but honestly, the survival of some places in the Capital Wasteland feels almost as improbable as that result, you know?
Yeah. That's actually an excellent thematic connection, though maybe one involves slightly less global devastation. We are swapping the football pitch for the unforgiving ruins of Washington, D.C. today.
Yep.
Today, we're embarking on what you might call a mission of exhaustive cartography. We're analyzing the sources that define the life, the death, and importantly, the moral character of the communities within Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland.
Right. Our mission for you, the listener, is basically complete overkill.
Right.
We've got this massive stack of sources detailing, every ranking system, every obscure moral choice, every architectural weirdness, and every bit of lore about the settlements that defined DC after the Great War. We're talking deep.
And this detail is, well, it's critical because Fallout 3 wasn't just another RPG. It came after established giants like Morrowind and Oblivion, sure, but Fallout 3 was the game that really took that whole Western RPG formula, the moral ambiguity, the deep lore, the post-apocalyptic flavor, and made it utterly mainstream on consoles.
Yeah, it really did blow up.
For a whole generation of gamers, the geography of the Capital Wasteland is basically etched into their memory, you know? Our goal here is to extract every single nugget of insight we can find. We're comparing structural integrity, moral ambiguity, the overall societal impact of these settlements.
We're giving you the full deep dive, like the 8-hour flight worth of analysis on why these towns stick in your head so much.
Exactly. So where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this beast. Let's start with the two great iconic poles that kind of anchor the whole map, and you could argue the entire philosophy of the game. We got to start right where the player usually does. Megaton.
Right, Megaton. It serves as the primary introduction to the Capital Wasteland for most players. It's your first real glimpse into a functioning, organized, well, sort of organized, if deeply problematic post-apocalyptic society. It sets the tone immediately.
Problematic is a very, very polite word for it. Its core identity, the central joke of its existence is that it is literally constructed around an undetonated atomic bomb, just sitting there in the middle of town.
Yep. It's the ultimate example of the series' trademark black humor, a constant, absurd risk management scenario playing out daily. And the sources are really clear that Megaton's whole existence is completely defined by that risk. Community commentary often calls it too iconic almost, acknowledging how ridiculous it is to settle next to a live nuke, but they also admit its visual aesthetic is just compelling. You know, a scrap-based fortified trading town built right into the impact crater itself.
It looks cool, gotta admit. And its presence immediately sets up the single most defining early game decision, the power of the atom. You get this fundamental choice right off the bat.
Yeah, disarm the bomb and save the town, though that often leads to the unfortunate death of Sheriff Sims, depending on how things play out.
Or you embrace pure, magnificent evil, get paid by that creepy Tenpenny guy, and just destroy the whole damn thing for profit. Make a big smoking crater where it used to be.
The immediate consequence, of course, is tied to housing. If you save Megaton, you get the, well, utilitarian but reasonably safe home there.
Good basic, I guess.
But if you go the destructive route, Alistair Tenpenny rewards you with that luxurious, almost pre-war suite up in Tenpenny Tower, far away from the blast zone.
Which is tempting, not gonna lie.
But what the sources really synthesize here is the structural difference between Megaton and, say, other major hubs. Even if you save Megaton, its leadership is constantly criticized in the community feedback as shaky or disorganized, especially when you compare it to the stability you see later in Rivet City. It seems to function more on chaotic necessity than any kind of ordered governance.
Yeah, Sims tries, but
Yeah.
But the real functional genius of Megaton, for the player at least, isn't just the bomb or the okay-ish house. It's Moira Brown.
Absolutely. The human element. She's that wonderfully enthusiastic, slightly unhinged NPC.
Totally unhinged.
And her Wasteland Survival Guide quest isn't just some quirky side mission. It's actually a vital, cleverly disguised tutorial for the entire game.
It really is. It forces you, the player, to engage with all the key mechanics: radiation, crafting, finding specific locations, dealing with injuries. It's basically an essential early game roadmap for the whole wasteland. She's the engine of discovery for the lone wanderer, even if the town itself is, like, held together with duct tape and prayers around a nuke.
Precisely. Now, let's pivot from that scrappy, high-risk community and contrast it with its diametric opposite in many ways, Rivet City.
Ah, Rivet City.
This settlement is cited by multiple sources, multiple community analyses, as perhaps the best execution of a truly living city that Bethesda managed to achieve in the Fallout franchise up to that point.
And it's just a marvel of design, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a massive settlement built entirely on a derelict pre-war aircraft carrier, just sitting there, beached strategically at the Washington Naval Yard. The visual alone just screams the old function for the new.
Its defensibility is almost unparalleled in the wasteland. Strategically, it stands out. You've got massive steel walls. It's a warship, a fully functional drawbridge controlling the only real entry point, and a large population of relatively well-armed residents.
Feels safe. Way safer than Megaton.
Definitely. That use of the old for the new, as one commenter put it, makes it feel like a proper fortress, far more structurally sound and inherently safer than any improvised scrap shanty town like Megaton.
And what justifies that living city claim, what makes it feel different, is the whole governance structure and the economy. Right?
Exactly. It's led by a councilship, a mix of dedicated scientists and merchants, so they're balancing innovation with commerce. The sources confirm that by 2277, Rivet City had really established itself as the largest, most reliable supplier of edible foodstuffs in the entire Capital Wasteland.
That's huge out there.
It is, and they were trading that vital resource in exchange for technology, salvage, protection, whatever they needed.
So it's a proper economic hub.
And its role evolved beyond just trade. Rivet City eventually took charge of coordinating the civilian side of Project Purity's water deliveries across the wasteland, which really cemented its position not just as a trading hub, but as a foundational piece of the region's infrastructure.
Right, yeah, with the purifier.
This stability, this ordered governance, this economic power, it's why fan sentiment often crowns Rivet City as practically the capital of the Capital Wasteland. It genuinely succeeded in creating a large-scale, functioning society where Megaton seems to just be clinging to survival around its bomb.
And it's crucial for the main story, too. It's absolutely central to the lone wanderer's personal quest, isn't it? Housing Dr. Lai.
Dr. Madison Lai, yes, who is critical to tracking down the player's father and understanding Project Purity. But what's intellectually satisfying looking back is its tangential lore connections. It hosts the replicated man quest.
Harkness, the android.
The android fleeing the Commonwealth. Now, that quest was a compelling little mystery back in Fallout 3, but the sources note that because of Fallout 4, introducing the Institute and the whole synth conflict.
Right. It suddenly got way more significant.
Exactly. The ethical dilemma and the political intrigue surrounding Harkness, centered in Rivet City, became magnified tenfold years later. It really underscores the high-level interregional conflicts the city was already grappling with, proving it was much more than just the safe trading post.
Even if finding your way around a damn carrier could be a total pain sometimes. All those levels.
Yes, the internal navigation challenges are a common player complaint in the sources. But despite that, Rivet City clearly represents the pinnacle of organized, stable civilization achieved in this entire post-war region. It's the high watermark.
Okay, so I've got Megaton's chaotic survival and Rivet City's ordered civilization. Now let's dive into the murkier parts of the map. The moral black and gray areas. The settlements that really force you, the player, to confront humanity's absolute darkest impulses.
And you really can't talk about darkness in the Capital Wasteland without immediately addressing Paradise Falls.
Ugh, yeah. Paradise Falls. The name itself is just dripping with horrible irony.
It functions explicitly as the fortified headquarters for the entire East Coast slave trade, disgustingly built into what was once a pre-war shopping center.
Just vile.
The physical presence itself is designed to be menacing. It's heavily fortified. You've got thick concrete buildings from the original structure, imposing scrap metal walls added on, armed guards patrolling everywhere. It screams, "Keep out unless you're one of them."
And getting in reflects that, right? It's not easy unless you're, well, bad news.
Precisely. The requirements for entry really reflect its status as a criminal sanctuary. You either need a high-speech skill check to bluff your way in, or you bribe the guard grouse with 500 caps, or you actually complete a heinous quest for them, like capturing specific people with the mesmetron.
Yeah, the slave requests. Grim.
Or you can just walk right in if your karma is already profoundly evil. They recognize their own kind, essentially. They do not welcome the good-natured or the naive.
What's interesting about the morality here, though, is how binary it feels, which is kind of rare for Fallout 3. Usually there's more gray. But here,
It presents an almost pure binary choice, you're right.
yeah,
The sources consistently stress the horrific nature of the place. The slaves are forced to wear explosive bomb collars controlled by the slavers. The player is basically faced with a decision. Either engage in business with these human traffickers, maybe buy or sell slaves yourself.
or launch an all-out violent assault to free everyone.
Exactly. One source we looked at specifically noted that saving the enslaved inhabitants is one of the most unequivocally right decisions the player can make in the entire game. There's no ambiguity about freeing slaves being good.
Yeah.
But the same source immediately pivots to acknowledge the common community feeling, that it's undeniably more fun and endlessly cathartic to simply say, screw it, breach the walls with your biggest guns, and just systematically kill every single slaver in sight.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
Huh.
It's satisfying to wipe those bastards out. That intellectual tension between the clear moral imperative and the raw, visceral satisfaction of pure destruction really speaks volumes about the player agency Fallout offers.
And there are tangible short-term consequences if you embrace that evil path and work with them. If you gain evil karma by completing quests for Paradise Falls, the major traditionally good-aligned settlements like Tenpenny Tower, ironically Rivet City, and even Little Big Town will become temporarily hostile towards you.
Really, they turn on you.
Temporarily, yes. The game forces you to wait 3 in-game days for them to essentially cool off before you can safely return and interact with them again. It's a clear systemic penalty for embracing the darkness and siding with the slavers.
Huh. Didn't know that specific mechanic. But long-term, lore-wise, they don't last, do they?
Well, the sources offer a rare piece of, arguably good news on that front. Paradise Falls is generally presumed by the lore community to have been eradicated sometime after the main events of Fallout 3, likely due to the Brotherhood of Steel's increasing military presence and Elder Lion's more humanitarian stance cleansing the wasteland. So, the slavers probably got what was coming to them eventually.
Good riddance. Okay, so from that absolute black hole of morality, let's pivot to something trickier, more gray. Orhefu and the family.
Yes, Arfu and the associated Meresti metro station. A very different kind of moral dilemma. Arfu itself is this small farming community built in a really visually unique way, perched precariously up on the girders of a derelict superhighway bridge. Looks kind of cool, actually.
Seems almost idyllic, right? Until you find out they're being terrorized by what initially seems like some kind of local vampire cult. The whole thing kicks off with the quest, Blood Ties.
Right, investigating the disappearance of a teenager, Ian West, and the brutal murder of his parents. The trail leads you away from the bridge settlement itself,
Down into the depths.
down into the Meresti metro station, which turns out to be the secluded home of this group calling themselves the Family. And this is where the deep dive into the moral ambiguity really occurs. You find Ian, and you discover they aren't supernatural vampires.
They're cannibal.
They are a cannibalistic cult, yes. However, and this is the crucial nuance that makes it so complex, their leader, Vance, is actively attempting to regulate their monstrous urges. He's trying to establish rules, teaching them to sate their inherent bloodlust exclusively with donated or scavenged blood packs, rather than actively hunting and preying on people.
Wow. They're trying not to be serial killers. They're like recovering cannibals.
In a sense, yes. Vance is trying to impose a kind of ethical framework onto their condition, arguing it's a disease they must manage, not indulge. He wants peaceful coexistence, or at least non-aggression.
Wow, okay. That is way more complicated than just kill the slavers. Yep.
Exactly. That's what makes the moral calculus here so difficult. They are self-regulating monsters. Unlike the clear-cut, predatory evil of the Paradise Falls slavers, Airfu presents a genuinely complex choice with no easy good answer. You can eliminate the family entirely, potentially saving Airfu from future threat, but wiping out this group trying to control itself. Or you could effectively let them take over Airfu, believing their warped sense of order is better than nothing. Or, and this is the most nuanced path, you can try to broker a truce between Airfu and the family.
A truce? How does that work?
Usually involves Airfu providing the family with regular blood packs in exchange for the family using their unique skills to protect Airfu from external raiders and wasteland creatures. symbiosis of a sort.
Blood for protection. Wow.
And the sources really emphasize the desperation here by noting the low population counts. There are only about 5 residents in Erifu and maybe 7 actual members of the family in Meresti. These aren't grand political factions making treaties.
This is just raw survival on the absolute fringes.
Exactly. The player is effectively forced to decide if a structured, potentially non-lethal form of inherent evil cannibals subsisting on blood packs is ultimately a better, more resilient option for communal survival than the potential chaos faced by an isolated, unprotected human settlement like Erifu. There's no clean win.
Okay. My head hurts from the moral gymnastics. We absolutely need an aesthetic break because, let's be honest, the Capital Wasteland, for all its amazing narrative depth, can get visually samey. Just endless broken concrete and rusted junk. This is where Oasis comes in, right? A breath of fresh air. Literally.
Literally. Oasis is geographically and visually a necessary respite. It's this isolationist settlement hidden away deep in the northern mountains, geographically quite separate from the DC ruins.
Yep.
And it's centered entirely around something unique, a massive, literally sentient tree.
Harold, good old Harold.
And its dedicated cult of worshippers, the tree minders. It provides this stunning, unexpected splash of green, a visual diversion from the monotonous urban decay and brown wasteland that dominates the rest of the map.
And for the real old-school Fallout fans, people who played the originals, the lore connection here is just... it's profound, isn't it?
Yeah.
That tree isn't just any tree.
No, it's Harold, an NPC who first appeared way back in the debut Fallout entry in 1997. He was a recurring character, a ghoul who had a small tree growing out of his head named Bob.
Yeah, Bob the Branch.
Over the decades, that growth Bob has completely overtaken Harold's body. He is the tree now, or the tree is him. He's less a quirky character anymore and more like a massive, living, conscious, and frankly suffering mythological monument.
It's kind of tragic, really.
It is. And the quest surrounding Oasis, appropriately, involves a life or death choice concerning this unique, natural, or perhaps unnatural entity. Harold himself, trapped, tired, and seemingly in constant pain from the uncontrolled growth, actually begs the lone wanderer to find a way to kill him peacefully.
He wants out, after all this time.
He wants release. Conversely, the tree minders, his worshippers and caretakers, are split on what should happen. Some want his unique life-giving gift expanded, using his seeds or spores to try and turn the surrounding wasteland green, fulfilling a kind of ecological prophecy.
Spread the green.
While others, more conservative, want the growth restrained, contained, to keep Oasis isolated and protected as their hidden paradise, fearing expansion would attract unwanted attention or dilute Harold's power.
So you're basically stepping into this ancient being's final moments and a religious schism about his legacy. Heavy stuff.
Extremely heavy. Your decision directly dictates the very survival of this unique community and potentially the future of the local environment around Oasis. The sources highlight the dramatic potential outcomes. Harold can die peacefully, achieving his wish, leaving the tree minders to mourn and carry on as best they can.
Option 1.
Option 2. His gift, his growth, can be either enhanced or restrained based on which faction of tree minders you side with, ensuring Oasis remains a contained, thriving paradise but keeping Harold alive against his will.
Right.
Or, option 3, if the player chooses a path of pure nihilism or maybe just misunderstanding, you can end up destroying Harold and potentially turning the tree minders hostile, leading to the collapse and destruction of the entire Oasis settlement.
Wow. That's an enormous moral and environmental burden for the lone wanderer to carry, deciding the fate of basically a nature god and his followers.
It is. And from that deeply spiritual, ecologically significant, and frankly quite serious environment, we transition now to the complete opposite extreme of the Fallout tone spectrum. The Republic of Dave.
Oh God, the Republic of Dave.
It is
Yes.
just...
This settlement single-handedly brings back that trademark zany, completely inane humor that was maybe more prevalent in the older Fallout titles. It's such a perfect satirical counterweight to the sheer unrelenting grimness you find elsewhere in Fallout 3.
It really is a palate cleanser. It's this tiny, remote scavenger settlement way out in the northeast corner of the map. And the central joke, the entire premise, is that basically every single inhabitant is Dave's immediate family.
It's just him, his 2 wives, his kids, maybe a couple of others.
Something like that, yes. And they're all ruled as this mock republic by the entirely self-elected, self-important President Dave.
And hilariously, as the sources point out, he's named this current iteration of his republic after himself. Just like he apparently named the 2 previous failed settlements after his father and his grandfather before that. The sheer, unadulterated, narcissistic ego is the entire point of the place.
The satirical brilliance really shines in the mechanics of his supposed democracy. He holds an election day event, puts on this whole performance of a fair democratic process, complete with ballot boxes and campaign speeches.
But it's totally rigged, right?
Completely. The player has to actively intervene by, manipulating votes, finding loopholes in his ridiculous constitution, or using speech checks to actually make him lose the election to one of the other candidates, usually his wife Razie or the settlement's protector Bob. The humor relies entirely on the fact that the entire structure is clearly and utterly rigged in Dave's favor, yet he pretends with absolute sincerity that it's a legitimate democracy.
And the sources, the community reactions we looked at, they loved this satire. I particularly enjoyed the one insight comparing Dave's overwhelming but completely shallow charisma to the charisma of certain real-world political figures.
Right, yes.
Quickly followed by the very pointed observation that Dave is, quote, a less fiscally responsible leader, which is saying something in the wasteland.
Indeed. And the ultimate punchline, the perfect encapsulation of his character, is what happens if he does actually lose the election, thanks to your meddling. Does he accept defeat gracefully, serve the public in a new role?
Hell no.
Of course not. He immediately declares the results invalid or simply packs up his most loyal family members and bails. He just leaves. And heads off to try and annex a new area, apparently planning to establish the new Republic of Dave over in the ruins of Old Olney.
It's just perfect. Political commentary distilled into this tiny, absurd microcosm of ego and delusion. Brilliant.
Moving back towards the core of the DC ruins now, our next section really deals with the deeply stratified society that has emerged in the wasteland. It demonstrates how pre-war concepts like wealth, class, and prejudice didn't just vanish with the bombs. They persist, and in some cases even flourish 2 centuries later.
And you can't talk about class and prejudice in the Capital Wasteland without talking about the ultimate post-apocalyptic gated community, Tenpenny Tower.
It really is an architectural anomaly, isn't it? Located quite remotely, this towering structure is almost entirely untouched by the nuclear devastation that leveled DC. It functions almost exactly like a perfectly pristine, upscale, pre-war hotel or apartment building.
It's jarring when you first see it, like stepping back in time almost.
And this is precisely why the Capital Wasteland's remaining rich retirees, the newly powerful elite, mercenaries looking for comfort, they all congregate here. They pay exorbitant prices and caps for the perceived safety, the luxury, and crucially, the exclusivity that the tower offers.
And the foundation of that exclusivity, the core rule, is explicitly anti-ghoul, isn't it?
Absolutely. This prejudice is driven directly by the tower's namesake and owner, the wealthy, eccentric Alistair Tenpenny. He views ghouls as dangerous, degenerate, aesthetically displeasing threats to his perfect, pristine society. This anti-ghoul policy isn't just a quirk, it's a foundational element of their social contract. No ghouls allowed, period.
And the player's relationship with Tenpenny Tower gets complicated fast, because it's directly tied to the fate of Megaton, right back at the start.
Inextricably linked. If you choose the good path and save Megaton by disarming the bomb, Tenpenny becomes an antagonistic force because he was the one who hired Mr. Burke to try and detonate it in the first place. He wanted the eyesore removed from his view.
What an asshole.
But if you embrace the evil path and actually detonate the bomb in Megaton,
Boom.
you are rewarded by Tenpenny himself with the ultimate luxurious, untouched home suite right there in Tenpenny Tower. It sets up the game's clearest good versus evil home-based rivalry. Do you live in the scrappy town you saved or the pristine tower you earned by destroying it?
Tough call for some, maybe. But the real moral meat comes later, with the ghoul situation, doesn't it?
Indeed. The central moral confrontation regarding Tenpenny Tower occurs during the quest involving a potential ghoul invasion titled Tenpenny Tower. A group of ghouls, led by the charismatic but ruthless Roy Phillips, seeks refuge inside the tower. They've been squatting in the nearby metro tunnels and argue they deserve a safe haven just as much as the wealthy smoothskins who live there.
And Tenpenny says no way.
Tenpenny and most of the residents are vehemently opposed. So the player is faced with a choice. Try to broker some kind of peaceful coexistence, which is very difficult due to the entrenched prejudice on both sides, or actively aid Roy Phillips and the ghouls in forcefully invading the tower.
And this is where the whole class warfare thing gets really brutal, right?
Yeah.
If you help the ghouls invade.
If the player aids Roy Phillips in the invasion, the sources detail the immediate horrifying consequence. The ghouls, led by the vengeful Roy, basically lay waste to the existing human residents. They just kill them all, including Alistair Tenpenny himself, usually found relaxing on his balcony. They seize the tower as their own through violence.
Jesus. So it's not like they move in peacefully. They just wipe everyone out.
In that outcome, yes, it's extremely dark. This quest perfectly symbolizes how deeply ingrained class separation, elitism, and violent prejudice are, even in this New World Order. It forces you to choose between defending wealthy, prejudiced snobs who probably despise people like the lone wanderer anyway, or aiding desperate, vengeful ghouls who resort to mass murder to get what they want. Again, no clean hands.
That's sassy.
The ultimate tragedy, perhaps, is that the tower's original inhabitants, despite clinging to their pre-war wealth and attitudes, failed to adapt to the realities of the wasteland. Tenpenny Tower becomes the symbol that even 200 years later, money and high walls cannot guarantee long-term security or moral superiority.
And what happens to it after? Does it just stay Ghoul Tower?
Well, that depends on the player's choices, but speculatively, some sources note that due to its remarkably intact structure, defensible position, and remote location, a cleared-out Tenpenny Tower could easily serve as a key staging ground, or even a new base for other powerful factions, like perhaps the remnants of the Enclave, especially after Tenpenny himself is inevitably removed from the picture one way or another. Its value is strategic, regardless of who holds it.
Right. Okay. Shifting gears again. Let's look at the two big HQs. Sort of.
Yeah.
The extremes of militaristic control on one hand and maybe marginalized sanctuary on the other. The Citadel and the Underworld.
An excellent pairing. The Citadel is, of course, the heavily fortified pre-war Pentagon building, now repurposed as the primary headquarters for the Brotherhood of Steel's East Coast chapter under Elder Owen Lyons.
It looks imposing as hell. Pure fortress.
And it functions as one. Access is severely restricted. You can't just wander in. It requires significant progress in the main storyline quest. It houses all the critical assets of this branch of the Brotherhood. The elite Lions Pride Combat Squad, their research labs working on Project Purity tech, and of course the massive symbolic pre-war war machine, Liberty Prime.
Prime. Democracy is non-negotiable.
Indeed. Its security is absolute and non-negotiable. Thick concrete walls that survive the bombs, massive reinforced metal gates, constant patrols by knights, and power armor. It's designed to repel armies.
But it's not really a settlement in the same way as Megaton or Rivet City, is it? Like, can you go shopping there?
That's the important distinction. While it's physically enormous, certainly bigger than Megaton in terms of footprint, the sources confirm it has far fewer civilian amenities. There are some vendors, a clinic, but it's primarily a military installation. Its focus is on containment, research, projecting force, and fulfilling the Brotherhood's mission, not on commerce or civilian life.
More barracks than bazaar.
Precisely. Furthermore, later lore, specifically referenced in dialogue and terminals in Fallout 4, confirms its lasting security and importance. The Citadel remains firmly under Brotherhood control even years later, after Elder Maxon's expeditionary force takes the main combat strength north to the Commonwealth aboard the Pridwen. It endures as their DC foothold.
Okay, so that's the military might. Now contrast that extreme, highly structured, human-led headquarters with the underworld, which is like the polar opposite socially, right?
In many ways, yes. The Underworld is this fascinating, self-sufficient community composed entirely of ghouls. And they reside, quite cleverly, within the abandoned Museum of History's extensive exhibit halls, right there in the heart of the heavily irradiated DC ruins. It is their sanctuary, strategically placed right in the eye of the DC storm, as one source put it.
I always thought the aesthetic there was super cool. Living amongst the museum displays like the giant mammoth skeleton and stuff gives it a unique vibe.
It does. And the museum setting provides this cool, dusty utility. It functions as a stable haven with numerous necessary vendors. Sure, the shotgun-toting bodyguard hails from here. You have doctors like Dr. Barrows, technical specialists like Winthrop dealing with scrap. It offers crucial services to anyone willing to brave the mall to reach them.
And the thinking is, ghouls are actually kind of well-suited to living there, aren't they?
That's the community belief, strongly supported by the game's lore. Ghouls, thanks to their vastly extended lifespans compared to humans, and more importantly, their innate resistance or even immunity to the pervasive background radiation. They fundamentally have the most potential to survive anything in the long term, ecologically speaking.
Radiation heals them, right?
Some lore suggests it can, yes, or at least doesn't harm them like it does humans. So, while they might be isolated and often feared or marginalized by human settlements, the underworld represents a form of stability achieved through inherent biological resilience, not through high-tech defenses or accumulated wealth. In a world defined by nuclear fallout and slow death, The ghouls have essentially mastered the environment in a way humans haven't.
So maybe the underworld is actually one of the most stable, long-term, viable societies in the entire Capital Wasteland, even if they are stuck in a museum basement.
It's a very strong possibility. Their endurance is unmatched.
Right, okay. So we've hit the big ones, the weird ones, the good, the bad, the ugly. Now that we've covered the major societal blocks, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Wasteland defense and accessibility. Because, let's face it, when you're trying to survive out there, safety and knowing who you're letting through the door are pretty damn paramount. This is like the learner's guide to Capital Wasteland security protocols and community politics.
A systematic review of the source commentary and community discussions highlights some clear leaders when it comes to pure, unadulterated settlement security. 3 locations consistently stand out based on their defense mechanisms, their geography, and frankly, their ingenious, sometimes unfair design.
Okay, lay 'em on me. Who's top dog for safety? Gotta be Little Lamplight, right? It's almost cheating.
Little Lamplight is definitely number 1 for inherent security. Its location is key. Deep within a massive, pre-existing cave system, naturally defensible, it has only one real entrance, the infamous, heavily trapped gauntlet known as Murder Pass.
Murder Pass. Says it all, really.
And on top of those formidable natural and artificial defenses, there's the meta-level protection. Its residents are all children, defined by the game engine as essential NPCs, meaning they're effectively immortal, innately protected from most player-driven consequences or accidental harm. You literally can't wipe them out easily.
But getting in is the trick, isn't it? They don't just let any adult wander through Murder Pass.
Access is intensely filtered. To gain entry peacefully, you either need the specific Child at Heart perk, which lets you connect with them on their level, or you must undertake a quest that forces you to interact directly with the horrors of Paradise Falls, usually rescuing some of their former members, Penny or Squirrel, from the slavers.
Wow, the irony is just staggering. To get into the safest, most protected place run by kids, you often have to first delve into the most dangerous, morally bankrupt slaver hellhole on the map.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition, yeah. It forces a moral compromise right at the gate.
Okay, who's number 2 on the security list? Rivet City.
Second, we return to Rivet City. Its multi-layered defense system is formidable. You've got the functional drawbridge controlling the single point of entry over water, the massive steel hull walls of the aircraft carrier itself providing unparalleled physical protection, and a large, well-organized, and reasonably well-armed populace within. It's a natural fortress against both organized raiders and the general chaos of the surrounding ruins.
Makes sense. Hard target.
Yeah.
And third, gotta be the Brotherhood, right?
And third, yes, the Citadel. Its location inside the pre-war Pentagon grants it unmatched structural integrity. That building was designed to survive a nuclear war, and largely did. This is then backed up by the largest, most disciplined, and technologically advanced military force in the entire region, the Brotherhood of Steel. That massive concrete walls, reinforced metal gates, and constant patrols by soldiers in power armor provide both physical and technological superiority over almost any conceivable threat. Very few would even attempt a direct assault.
Right. So those are the big 3 fortresses.
Yeah.
But what about the other places? What's interesting are those subtle accessibility challenges you mentioned, the ways these new societies kind of filter who gets to belong. It's not just about walls.
Exactly. It's not a free-for-all out there. Tenpenny Tower explicitly requires wealth or complicity in evil deeds. Paradise Falls demands criminal intent, cold hard cash, or proof of evil karma. Even the seemingly absurd Republic of Dave requires a payment of 250 caps or passing a speech check just to gain entry to his tiny fiefdom.
It shows the Capital Wasteland isn't some open frontier. It's highly stratified already, based on who you are, what you possess, what faction you align with, or sometimes what terrible deeds you're willing to commit just to get through the gate. Who belongs is constantly being negotiated and enforced.
Moving past the secure giants and the morally dubious gatekeepers, we find this fascinating collection of smaller, minor communities. And what defines them, almost universally in the sources, is that their very survival seems to hinge almost entirely on the outcome of a specific quest the player undertakes. They exist right on the fringe, proving just how fragile localized independence really is.
Okay, like who? Big Town comes to mind. Poor sods.
Big Town is a perfect example. It's a settlement made up entirely of former Little Lamplight residents, the kids who grew too old and got kicked out of the cave system. They're adults now, but lack basic survival skills. Their continued existence hinges entirely on the player first rescuing their kidnapped leader, Red, from the super mutants.
Which is tough enough.
And then, crucially, the player must choose to actively teach the remaining unskilled residents basic survival techniques. How to shoot, how to repair things, how to set up defenses like mines.
Oh, right. You can teach them skills.
The sources detail that if the player doesn't do this, if they just rescue Red and leave, the settlement inevitably dissolves. Super mutants or raiders return, and the remaining residents are dispersed or killed off-screen. Their survival literally depends on player intervention and knowledge transfer. It emphasizes the extreme fragility of small communities lacking that core survival knowledge base.
Grim. Okay, who else is living on a quest knife edge?
Then there's Canterbury Commons. This settlement functions as a significant merchant hub, a crossroads for the traveling caravans. It's even noted in commentary as being visually prettier than many settlements because it's strategically placed within relatively intact pre-war buildings, rather than being constructed entirely from scrap shacks. Looks nicer.
But there's a catch, right? The supers.
The big catch. Its continued commerce and relative peace depend entirely on the player intervening to resolve the highly destructive, ongoing, and frankly, quite theatrical conflict between the two costumed superheroes, the Mechanist and the Antagonizer, whose battles constantly threaten the trade routes, damage property, and endanger the residents and merchants. You have to end their feud for the town to truly prosper.
Right, the weirdos in costumes.
Yeah.
Gotta sort them out.
We also have the Temple of the Union. This isn't really a permanent settlement initially, but rather a temporary abolitionist fortress established by escaped slaves from Paradise Falls. It's heavily focused on the ideological fight against slavery.
Yeah, Hannibal Hamlin leads them.
Exactly. Its lasting success, its transformation from a temporary camp into a potent symbol of freedom in the wasteland, is tied directly to the player, ensuring they complete their ambitious mission to permanently occupy and secure the Lincoln Memorial downtown, turning that temporary abolitionist base into a lasting, fortified monument against human trafficking and slavery. Success depends entirely on completing that quest objective.
Giving Lincoln back to the people fighting for freedom. Nice touch.
And we can't overlook the sheer, unsettling strangeness found in some corners, like Andale.
Oh God, Andale. Don't remind me. Shudder.
This reclusive, highly secretive community is hidden away in this small cluster of remarkably intact pre-war houses. Looks perfectly normal, even idyllic on the surface, but it masks a profoundly dark secret.
They're cannibals. Nice, friendly neighborhood cannibals.
They are indeed cannibals, maintaining their isolation and maybe their perfect lifestyle by murdering and consuming any outsiders who stumble upon their town or ask too many questions. The player discovers this secret and must then decide. Expose their dark hidden tradition, likely leading to the destruction of the community, or simply look the other way, allowing the darkness to continue for the sake of preserving one small, seemingly intact village in the wasteland.
Creepy choice. Just creepy.
Or consider a much smaller, less morally fraught example, Girder Shade. A tiny scavenging outpost, really just two shacks. It's primarily notable in Fallout 3 for housing Sierra Petrovita.
Nuka-Cola girl. The obsessed one.
The utterly obsessed, fanatical Nuka-Cola collector, yes. Her role is minor in Fallout 3, it's just a quirky collection quest. But her subsequent actions, referenced years later, traveling all the way from the Capital Wasteland to the Nuka World theme park in Massachusetts, which is confirmed in Fallout 4's DLC lore, actually serves to cement the continued, if eccentric, existence of Girder Shade as a viable, if tiny, launch point for dedicated, obsessive scavengers, even long after the Lone Wanderer's time. Her journey confirms its persistence.
Oh, never thought of it that way. Her surviving proves Girder Shade survives, kinda.
In a lore sense, yes.
Yeah.
Finally, though, we really must briefly acknowledge the communities that just plain failed, because their destruction serves as a stark, constant reminder of the terrifying dangers lurking everywhere in the Capital Wasteland. It demonstrates that failure, collapse, annihilation, that's always the most likely outcome for any settlement.
Yeah, the wasteland is harsh, like Greatitch.
Indeed. The lesson of failure is starkly illustrated by Greatitch. A seemingly average, small, pre-war town trying to rebuild, completely destroyed. Its inhabitants killed or forced to flee, not by raiders or mutants, but by mutated, fire-breathing ants originating from a nearby scientist's experiment gone wrong. Nature itself turning monstrous.
Fire ants. Nightmare fuel.
And even more horrifying, perhaps, are the human threats that led to total annihilation. Places like Minefield, aptly named now, covered in mines left by a pre-war psycho in Rockopolis, which was apparently a hidden settlement founded by Argyle, a companion.
Yeah, you find his body.
Both of these smaller, relatively unprotected villages were completely sacked, destroyed entirely by slavers operating out of Paradise Falls. Their entire populations were either killed during the raids or captured and sold into slavery. It just underscores the horrific, far-reaching, devastating threat posed by organized human predators like the Paradise Falls slavers across the entire map. The wasteland does not forgive weakness, isolation, or a lack of organized defense. Failure is always lurking.
Okay, wow. We have done a serious tour. We've basically traversed the entire Capital Wasteland map, haven't we? We've gone from the absolutely absurd, narcissistic ego trip of the Republic of Dave to the sublime, almost mythological beauty and sadness of Oasis, and dragged ourselves to the utter systemic horror of Paradise Falls and the creepy secrets of Annandale.
We've covered a lot of ground, yes.
The sheer variety, the depth, and the incredible moral weight that is baked into every single one of these settlements, big or small. That's precisely why Fallout 3's world building was so revolutionary at the time, why it redefined the open world RPG genre for a whole generation of console players. It made the place matter as much as the plot.
And that emphasis on player agency within these places is absolutely paramount. The ultimate fate, the specific nuance, the final outcome of nearly every single community we discussed today, from whether Megaton even exists, to whether Big Town learns to defend itself, to how the conflict in Tenpenny Tower resolves, it all rested squarely on the Lone Wanderer's choices. Your choices.
Yet you weren't just passing through, you were shaping their futures.
These settlements weren't just passive background elements or quest hubs. They were active moral calculations. Ethical dilemmas presented as locations on a map that the player had to constantly navigate and resolve. That's why they remain so memorable.
And that leads us right to the ultimate question, the final takeaway we have to leave you, the listener, with. Synthesizing all this information we've chewed over today, all this stuff about governance, defense, resources, morality, societal structure. Given the intense fragility of this new world, given how easily settlements fail, what do you actually believe is truly the Capital Wasteland's best hope for long-term, lasting survival?
It's a tough question with no single right answer. Is it perhaps the protected wealth and the remarkably intact pre-war structure of Tenpenny Tower? Even if that very wealth and structure make it a prime target for powerful, ruthless factions like the Enclave, or maybe even a resurgent brotherhood with different ideals.
Or is it Rivet City? With its immediate, overwhelming defensive capabilities, its established trade networks, its attempts at organized scientific governance, is that the model for the future?
Or perhaps, paradoxically, is the future truly owned by the quiet, marginalized, but incredibly enduring, radiation-resistant resilience of the ghouls? Hunkered down in the underworld, masters of the very irradiated environment that is killing everyone else slowly, is their biological adaptation the ultimate key?
Wealth and walls. Order and trade. Or just learning to live with the radiation.
Whoa, damn. That's something to definitely mull over as you navigate your own wasteland adventures.
Indeed it is. Food for thought until our next deep dive.
Reflect on the lore, check your karma level, maybe go rescue Sunderland from relegation again in your mind, and we'll catch you next time.